What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Love Turned Anko Possessive Over Naruto? Part 2. Naru-chan, wake up. Naruto rolled over in his bed and sighed. He was very tired still and didn't want to wake up, but he knew his Ne-chan, and if he didn't there would be dire consequences. Mitarashi Naruto sat up in his bed and stretched. At the age of 12 Naruto had grown to a height of 5 foot 4 inches and a weight of about 150 pounds. He had spent the last 4 years training hard with Anko and Ibiki so that he was fully capable when it came to torture and interrogation, and most of the kids in his class stayed away from him because of that. Not that he minded. No, Naruto was content with having Hinata and Tenten as his friends and couldn't ask for more. Over the past 4 years Naruto had worked side by side with Anko and Ibiki on 2 or 3 interrogations and found that he was quite good at them. His training with Anko would now be considered more of a spar than a teaching session because Anko had finished her teachings when she allowed him to sign the summoning contract for snakes. He was now just under her in his mastery of his skills, but he knew he would most likely never catch her because as they sparred they both got better, so there was always that gap between them that showed that she was the mistress and he was the student. Thinking back to his friends, Naruto couldn't help but smile. Hinata had finally lost her stutter and was as confident in her skills as either Naruto or Tenten. She had allowed her hair to grow out and it now reached just past her shoulders. Naruto also noticed that as she grew she became even more beautiful and now bared a striking resemblance to her Ka-san. Her style of clothing had stayed the same with her bulky jacket and a pair of dark indigo pants. When Tenten asked why she hid behind her clothing, she said it was because she didn't want people gawking at her. Of course this was said with a blush. No matter how confident Hinata got, she was still very kind and shy, but now if someone made her mad enough, she would beat them to a pulp. Luckily it took a lot to anger the kind girl. Tenten had also grown more and more beautiful as the years passed, and Naruto couldn't help but notice how puberty was affecting her. She, like the other two, kept her same style of clothing and also the same hairstyle. She had taken Naruto's words to heart and began learning her family's taijutsu style. Naruto couldn't help but laugh when he remembered the look on his friend's face when her Ka-san told her that her side of the family had their own style. Ironically, it was based on making one's body into a weapon by molding their chakra through their limbs. So as long as Tenten had chakra and her arms and legs, she had a weapon. The fact that she had graduated the year before and was now under the tutelage of a taijutsu freak named Might Guy only helped refine her style even more. Tenten had introduced them to her team one time and Naruto and Hinata knew that they would never forget that day. Her 2 other teammates were Rock Lee, a very nice boy with an ugly bowl-shaped haircut and huge fuzzy eyebrows, and Hyuga Neji, Hinata's Itoko cousin. This guy was an asshole in every sense of the word and took pleasure in degrading others. Tenten thought he was a jerk and had a fun time making fun of him. Lee, like Guy, wore a hideous green, nearly skin-tight, training suit that made even Anko want to run away screaming. Most people, though, were able to look past this because they were both very nice people, if a little strange. The weirdest thing about it was that they were even louder than Naruto when they worked themselves up, and by a very large margin. The last 4 years at the academy were as exciting as watching 2 snails play chicken for Hinata and Naruto. Naruto was at the top of his class with Hinata in a very close second. This fact seemed to piss off Sasuke and his 2 harpies Ino and Sakura to no end. Sasuke had lost his entire family when the group turned 9. His own Ni-san had slaughtered everyone, only leaving Sasuke alive, but so messed up that even Anko was slightly worried about him. This sympathy was short-lived as Naruto had attempted to make friends with the boy after he had returned to the academy, but the boy sneered and spat at his offer. He clearly didn't want any friends or pity. Naruto also couldn't believe how the village reacted. It was like their precious Uchiha could do no wrong. This was the reason both Anko and Naruto stopped caring. They had both suffered worse than he had and they were still treated as pariahs. Sasuke's only goal in life was to kill his Ni-san and resurrect his lost clan, while Ino's and Sakura's dream seemed to be that they would be one to help with that. "Are you up yet?" asked Anko as she opened his door to find him sitting on his bed in nothing but his boxers. "Nice, Naru-chan. Maybe I should call Tenten over and see if she would help get you up." Naruto was awake enough to work through what she had said, so with a groan and a deep blush he said, "Shut up, Nei-chan. How many times do I have to tell you that Tenten-chan and I are just friends, and stop calling me, Naru-chan? You keep telling yourself that, but everyone around you knows the truth," she stated before leaving the room. It was true. Naruto was head over heels for his brown-haired best friend, and he and everyone else, aside from Tenten herself, seemed to know it. Oddly enough, the same was true for Tenten. She and everyone else knew that she liked Naruto, but him and most of their adult friends just enjoyed watching the two fumble around each other. With one last sigh, Naruto got out of bed and walked across the hall to the bathroom, where he took a quick shower and got dressed. He then walked into the kitchen to find Kurenai and Anko sitting at the kitchen table eating their breakfast. After finding out that Naruto was fine with the two of them being together, it didn't take too long before Kurenai moved in with them. It was soon after that they decided to make their relationship public, much to the disappointment and utter joy of the village's men. The perverts were being perverts, so any attractive lesbian couple was a joy to have around, while the semi-perverts and non-perverts were disappointed that two of the most attractive women in the village were, in fact, attracted to each other. Most of the women and older people of the village were disgusted with them, but a few were just happy that they seemed happy. Of course, nothing but glares were given to them because Anko and Kurenai were not to be taken lightly, and Naruto was very well known for killing any person he heard speaking bad about the two, but it took quite a bit to reach that point with him. Luckily for the villagers and shinobi of Konohagakure, word of Naruto's reaction to anyone speaking ill of his Nei-chan and her lover spread like wildfire, so people quickly learned to hold their tongue around him. Mostly the couple just ignored everyone and went about their business. "So, are you excited about the exam?" asked Kurenai as Naruto dropped down into a seat across from them. "Oh yeah, the Genin exam is today." Smiling, Naruto answered. "Very. I know we will get nothing but crap missions like Tenten-chan did, but anything is better than the academy. Iruka sensei is great and all, but most of the time I'm pleading with Hinata-chan to kill me." Speaking of Hinata, have you noticed the shy little looks she sends to a certain stoic insect-loving boy? Asked Anko. "Who hasn't?" replied Naruto. "Even I can see that those two like each other and are just too dense to realize it themselves, or too embarrassed in Hinata-chan's case." Anko and Kurenai snorted loudly at this. Naruto saying that someone else was dense when it came to relationships was pretty funny to them. "Shut up. I know that I like Tenten-chan, but she doesn't like me," he said sadly. "Naruto, you are a fool," said Kurenai with a fond smile. "And we don't know yet if Shino returns her feelings. That boy is too damn hard to read. Oh, and if you don't pass, then you will still be my apprentice for the next year, and I really don't think you want that." Anko threatened with her usual smirk and gleam in her eyes. Whatever she had planned would promise pain if nothing else. "Oh, I'll pass all right. You two are looking at this year's Rookie of the Year, not that I give a damn about that stupid title. Neji was last year's and he is the biggest prick I've ever met. I told Tenten-chan and Hinata-chan that I think he holds the world record for largest stick to ever fit up someone's, but until I can prove it they won't believe me, and I really don't want to be in the position where I could prove it," said Naruto, while Anko and Kurenai laughed as he shuddered at the last part. They both knew of Neji because Guy had been one of the first ones to congratulate them on being open with their relationship. He spent hours shouting about their flames of youth, and about the powers of youthfulness. He had brought his team with him, and it seemed that Neji was one of the few young men in the village who looked down on their relationship. Tenten and Lee, on the other hand, were happy for them. Tenten had known about it much longer than the rest of the village because she was Naruto's friend. Lee was a mini guy, so he shouted the same stuff Guy did before the two started crying and hugging. That was when Anko and Kurenai decided to leave them. Anko might be a crazy sadist, but Guy and Lee were just plain crazy but had a much nicer disposition than she did. I'm sure you'll do great. What team are you hoping to be on? Kurenai inquired. Well, I am hoping to have you as a sensei since you became a Junin sensei this year. For teammates, I want Shino and Hinata-chan. We would make a very good scouting team, he said with a little excitement. Kurenai was certainly happy that he wanted to be on her team and a little surprised that he had figured out that she would be given a scouting team, but she was curious as to his reasoning as to why he should be on the team. Why should a torture and interrogation specialist be on a scouting team? She asked while Anko looked curious as well. Naruto stopped eating and explained. The way I see it is that the team would have been Kiba, Hinata, and Shino. I personally think that this is a team that is too specified. If something were to happen, the team would be in danger. Also, having a torture and interrogation specialist is a bonus for a scouting team because we could pick off an enemy shinobi and I could get info from them without our having to go too far into enemy territory. I have also been working with Anko Nei-chan for years and I am as good a tracker as anyone in my class. I also have my snake summons that wouldn't look out of place anywhere in the elemental countries. I know that it is a long shot for me to get the team I want, but I can hope. Anko and Kurenai were both speechless by his reasoning and wondered why scouting team weren't set up like this to begin with. One reason they both knew was because Naruto would be one of only 3 interrogation specialists in Konohagakure. Very few people wanted the job and fewer still were any good at it. Anko made a mental note to speak to the Hokage about this. Kurenai decided to do the same because she, like many other scouting specialists, had lost her team on a mission where they met heavy resistance and didn't have the raw power needed to fight their way out, and what Naruto said offered them a way to rectify this problem to a certain extent. Well, I had better get going before Hinata-chan decides to kill me because I made her suffer without me, stated Naruto as he stood and gave both of the women a quick hug before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Anko had finally taught him the Konohagakure version of the body flicker and he was so happy she had. He had spent hours thanking her because apparently leaves were a lot better than a cloud of smoke. Like every time before, Naruto appeared in the middle of the class. By now, no one even looked up at him and Hinata just smiled brightly at him from her usual seat. Good morning, Hinata-chan, he called as he walked up to her and sat down beside her. Good morning, Naruto-kun, how are you? She asked softly. I'm great. Kurenai and Anko Nei-chan finally managed to wake me up and Anko Nei-chan threatened me if I failed, he answered. You. The usual. My two-san sneered at me, my Imouto glared at me, and Neji told me I'm useless and will only be a burden to my team if I were to pass, she answered. Her family hadn't changed one bit over the last few years and now Hanabi started in on her as well. It seemed that no matter how strong she got, it was never good enough for any of them except a few branch house members. The Hyuga clan was broken into the main house, which was the clan head and the possible heirs or heiress, and the branch house which was everyone else. The two houses hated each other and Hinata seemed to be the only one that was on good terms with anyone in the branch house. Naruto and Tenten were horrified when Hinata had told them about the caged bird seal that was placed on every branch member. The seal was used to seal that person's blood limit should an enemy get a hold of their body. It could also be used by the main house to punish them. Once the curse was activated, it caused the person blinding pain in their heads and could kill them if it was left active for too long. Why don't you just beat your Imouto and show them that you aren't worthless? Asked Naruto for what seemed like the millionth time. I won't fight my Imouto just so my two-san will be happy. If I beat her, he might start treating her the way he does me, she reasoned. But now she is growing up to be a cruel and arrogant person. Which is really better? Naruto asked. Naruto-kun, please, she said softly. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's just a hard choice to make. I know all about hard times and choices, Hinata-chan. You know that, he said calmly. I know you do, Hinata admitted. So, did you dream about Tenten-chan last night? She asked with a slight smirk. How did you know? Shut up, he shouted as his face turned red. Did you have one about Shino-kun? He said quietly and in a mocking tone. Shut up. Hinata stuttered as her own face turned red. Truce, he offered. Deal, Hinata said quickly. After this the two fell into a silence before Naruto had to say something. I can't believe you like Shino. Hinata growled and smacked him upside the head. Shut up or I tell Tenten-chan that you said she was fat. Naruto paled and his eyes went wide. Hey now, there's no need for that. Oh, and have I told you how beautiful you look today? He said nervously. That's what I thought, Hinata said smug tone. Of course I could just tell Shino that you were smashing bugs in the forest yesterday while cackling madly. Naruto stated offhandedly. Please don't, begged Hinata. Shino was from the Aburame clan and they were basically living hosts for their insects. When they are born they offer their bodies as a hive and allow them to feed off their chakra. In return they gain control over the bugs, thus making them the only bug-using clan in Konohagakure. Shino was something of a clan prodigy and hated it when people smashed bugs for no reason, and if Naruto were to tell him that Hinata did that then he would most likely never speak to her again. Relax. I wouldn't do that to you. Now, who do you want on your team? He asked. I would like to have you in, she said shyly. I know. That is actually that team I'm hoping for. He said. Really? Yes, really. You know why I want you on my team, and Shino is strong and will make a very good shinobi. He reasoned before a slight smirk began forming over his calm expression. He is also the least likely to annoy me. I'd hate to have to poison my teammate every single time they opened their mouth and said something stupid. Anything else they planned on saying was cut off as Iruka walked into the room and the would-be shinobi fell into a nervous silence. Today will be the Genin exams. If you pass you will leave the academy and begin your work as a shinobi of Konohagakure. If you fail, well, just don't fail. This test will be divided into two parts. The first will be a written test to show your knowledge of various shinobi terms and situations. The second will be for you to show us, Mizuki sensei and I, the academy jutsus that you learned. They of course are Bunshin, Kawarimi, Henge. If you were to pass the written test and do 2 out of the 3 jutsus then you will still pass, but failing any 2 will result in you failing. Now, I will hand out the written test. After you are done you may take your lunch break, and when everyone is done and has had enough time to eat, I will call you one at a time into the room to show us your jutsus. You may want to practice a little during lunch, and Naruto, please don't poison the class again. Iruka said while the class snickered at the last part. It had become all too common for the class to come back from lunch sick or unable to use certain parts of their bodies. Fine. Ruin all my fun, said Naruto with a pout while Iruka slammed his paper down in front of him and smiled. Good luck all of you and begin. Iruka called out as he walked back to his desk. Naruto flipped his test over and began reading the questions. Oh, I am going to be so happy when I get out of here, he thought as he began filling in the answers to the beyond simple test. Yes, it could have been hard if he hadn't had Anko drilling everything into his head at a young age, but the fact of the matter was that he did. It wasn't even 5 minutes when Naruto began reading back through his completed test to make sure he hadn't missed one. Once he was done proofreading his test he stood and walked down to Iruka. Here you go, he said as he laid the paper in front of him. Iruka looked startled for a moment before he saw that it was Naruto. I should have known it was you. How was it? Iruka-sensei, I've told you before. You are a great teacher. I'm not trying to make you look bad by passing everything. I'm just used to Anko-ne-chan's way of teaching. The people who didn't have my kind of training, this test will be hard, as it should be, but you have taught us everything we needed to know, Naruto said reassuringly. Iruka sighed and nodded. He always felt nervous when his students took this test because if he didn't teach them well then they could be killed. This was one of the major drawbacks of being a teacher at this kind of academy. I'll be outside poisoning everyone's food, joked Naruto as he walked out of the class while grabbing his and Hinata's lunches and walking over to the tree they always sat under. He didn't have to wait long before Hinata came outside with Sakura, Ino, and Sasuke trailing behind her. The latter walked off somewhere while the other two followed him. It was a little sad to note that Tenten had been right about those two. If anything, the beginnings of puberty had made them even worse when it came to their Sasuke-kun. I'm glad that's over, said Hinata as she sat down and took her lunch from Naruto. You didn't have trouble, did you? Asked Naruto. None at all, but I was still very nervous. I kept thinking about failing, she admitted as they began to eat. You shouldn't worry so much. You're a great shinobi, and once we pass this test you can prove it to everyone else, he stated calmly. Well, if you would worry more then maybe I wouldn't have to. She shouted. True, but that's not likely to happen, admitted Naruto with a fox-like grin. Do you ever find our friendship odd? What do you mean? Hinata asked. Naruto laid back and rested his head on a tree root before answering. Well, I mean you, Tenten-chan, and I. You are the shy, quiet heiress of this village's most respected clan. I am a demon vessel and hated by almost all of this village, and my Nei-chan is just as bad as I am. Tenten-chan is a weapons expert that would rather pump you full of shuriken and kunai than listen to you whine. We have to be the weirdest group of friends in the village, and yet we have never fought in the 8 years we've known each other. Normally I would say that as a group we even each other out, but that doesn't work in our case because we get along fine even if it is just two of us. I used to wonder about that, she said calmly. Did you ever find an answer? Naruto asked. Nope. Well, not one that you are searching for. I decided that it didn't matter. One day when we were all just laying around in some random clearing we had found, I came up with my answer. I was going to enjoy it while it lasted and hope that it lasts forever. I don't need reasons why I like being around the two of you, I know I do, and that's good enough for me. Now if you ask why I like Shino-kun then I could give you millions of reasons, she stated with a small grin. I bet you could. Naruto then gave a short laugh. But I'm the same way about Tenten-chan, I guess. I know I like her, but I don't know if I'll ever have the nerve to tell her. It's odd hearing you say that. Normally you would say anything to anyone, consequences be damned, but now you can't tell a girl you and I have been best friends with for 8 years that you like her, she said softly as she found another root and laid back like Naruto had. Making fun of the Hokage is one thing. Teasing Anko Nei-chan and Kurenai is one thing. Telling a girl that you like her is an entirely different thing, commented Naruto while Hinata just shook her head. The two stayed like this until Iruka began calling names. One by one students were called back into the room, and one by one they came out smiling while holding their hitai tightly in their hand. Hyuga Hinata. Iruka called. Wish me luck. Hinata muttered as she stood and brushed herself off. Like you need it, replied Naruto with a bright smile. Hinata smiled at him and, accidentally, kicked him in the side as she walked past him on her way back into the room. Not fair. Naruto shouted, only to reserve a rude finger gesture in return. This of course made Naruto laugh loudly as he turned to watch the clouds again. Hinata could be so different yet still so much the same as she was all those years ago. It was only a few minutes before Hinata came barreling out of the room and back towards Naruto, who she jumped on as soon as she made it. I did it, she shouted as she continued to jump on Naruto. Okay, please stop jumping on me, he yelled. Oh, sorry, she said sheepishly as she sat down beside him. It's no problem. Oh, and great job Hinata-chan, he replied brightly. I'm so happy, she cried as she looked like she wanted to start jumping on him again. That's fine. You be happy all you want as long as you don't jump on me, he teased. Mitarashi Naruto. Iruka called. My turn, he said as he got to his feet and messed up Hinata's hair before running away from the now angry Hyuga. I'll get you, they heard as the door to the room closed. Do you mind if I stay here for a few hours? Naruto asked nervously while watching the door. Yes, we do. Besides, you probably deserve whatever it is she is going to do to you, Iruka said with a smile. I'm hurt. What have I ever done that would make you think such a thing? He asked. Too many to list right now. Please show us the jutsus. Sure thing. Naruto said happily. In quick succession, Naruto showed them every jutsu they wanted to see. Alright Naruto. You pass. Stated Iruka before he grabbed a headband and threw it to the blonde demon vessel. Thanks for everything Iruka-sensei. He called out as he ran from the room and straight into a still angry Hinata. Hello Hinata-chan. Don't you look wonderful? He said nervously as Hinata slowly advanced on him. I told you I would get you Naruto-kun and now I will. She said softly, but Naruto knew that it wasn't her usual soft tone of voice. Please don't kill me. I'll let you mess up my hair. He offered. Hinata paused at this. Naruto hated when people messed up his hair because it was now down to his waist and very hard to get untangled. This was a chance she couldn't pass up. Deal. Sighing, Naruto pulled out his ponytail and sat down on the ground in front of Hinata. With childlike glee, Hinata began to mess up Naruto's hair to the best of her ability, which, as it turns out, is pretty good. By the end of it, Naruto and Hinata both looked like fools before they began brushing their hair straight again. This act took up the remainder of the test, and as Hinata put Naruto's hair back into a ponytail, Iruka dismissed them with instructions to be back there tomorrow morning at 8 to get put into their teams and to meet their new sensei. Naruto, can I see you for a moment? Asked their other instructor, Mizuki. Sure. Hinata-chan, can you go on without me? He asked. No problem. Bye. She said before hugging him tightly before running up to her house. Once she was gone, Naruto turned back to Mizuki and asked. What can I do for you, Mizuki-sensei? I know that you are at the top of your class and I am supposed to ask you if you want to take an extra test. Mizuki explained. There are no other tests, Kurenai or Nei-chan would have told me. I wonder what he's playing at. Thought Naruto before saying. I would love to. Good. Now here is what you do, said Mizuki as he began explaining to Naruto the goal and rules of the test. I can to that. When should I start? Naruto asked while inside he was shouting traitor at the man. You can start whenever you want, but it has to be done by tonight. Mizuki said before disappearing with a slight smirk on his face. That demon brat will do all the work and then I'll get the rewards. He thought. As soon as the man was gone, Naruto dropped his fake smile and an angry look spread over his face. Naruto might not have liked most of the villagers, but Konohagakure was still his home and he hated traitors more than the villagers. With one last glare at the spot where Mizuki had been standing, Naruto disappeared and reappeared in front of the Hokage and a large group of Junins, which included Kurenai. They must be getting ready to pick their teams. Naruto thought. Can I help you, Naruto? Asked the Hokage calmly while some of the Junin sneered at the demon. Yes. I have to talk to you about something. Naruto said firmly. Can it wait? Asked the third Hokage. No. It's far more important than picking Genin teams, said Naruto. What would you know, you little shit? Snapped one of the Junins. I know that if you speak to him like that again you will die, said Kurenai darkly. This seemed to shut up any Junin who seemed to have problem. Standing slowly, the Hokage walked with Naruto into a side room. What is it? Asked the Hokage. He knew that Naruto never messed around when it came to important matters, and if he said something was important then it was. Mizuki approached me after the exam and asked if I wanted to take a special test. Naruto said calmly. And what is this special test? He wants me to steal the scroll of seals from you. My guess is that he wants to steal it from me and flee the village. I wanted to tell you so you knew why I stole it. Naruto explained. So you are going to steal it? Stated the Hokage calmly. Well, yeah, I can learn some cool new jutsus while I'm waiting for Mizuki to show up. After I get rid of him, then I'll bring it back. You know that if you tried to stop him now, it would be his word against mine, and you know who they would believe. Naruto said softly. The Hokage closed his eyes and sighed. He did know who everyone would believe. Most everyone in the village would take Mizuki's side simply because the demon must be lying. He on the other hand trusted Naruto with his life. I'll agree to this, but I must forbid you from reading anything in that scroll about your seal. It would take a seal master to understand it, and you might do something just by reading it. Please follow this one rule, Naruto. I will, Jii-san. Can you get it for me? Naruto asked. The Hokage simply reached behind him and seemed to take a random scroll off of a large pile of nameless scrolls. This is the scroll, he said as he handed Naruto the scroll. Naruto looked at it and snorted with laughter. Who puts the forbidden scroll on the front of a scroll of unimaginable power? Did the creator want people to try and steal it? My senseis had a very odd sense of humor, said the Hokage with a sigh. Thanks, Jii-san, said Naruto before he disappeared with the scroll and reappeared the middle of a clearing in the woods to the east of the village. Naruto sat down against a tree and began to read. As the Hokage walked out of the room alone, the Junins looked at him questioningly. Don't worry about it. Young Naruto was just bringing something important to my attention. Now then, who has first pick? He asked. I do, said Kurenai happily. She got to pick her entire team first because she had beaten the other Junin senseis at poker the night before. Contrary to popular opinion, teams were not selected by some highly advanced system. Most of the time the Junins sat around playing cards while thinking of which of the available graduates would give them the least amount of headaches or which were the least likely to try and kill each other. So who do you want? Asked the Hokage. I want Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and Mitarashi Naruto, she stated while most of the group looked confused. It is obviously a scouting team, but Mitarashi threw everything off. Why him? Asked a large, muscular Junin named Asuma. The lit cigarette hanging from his lips defied all logic by not falling as he spoke. Naruto told me this morning that he wanted to be on my team with Hinata and Shino. I, like the rest of you, was confused until I heard his reasoning. He told me that a team that is too specified, like our scout teams, have a history of being easily beaten. If you were to add more power to the team, in this case Naruto, then they would have a better chance of getting out of a fight alive. He also brought up his field of work. He told me that a torture and interrogation specialist would do very well on a scout team because if they came across an enemy shinobi, then they might get the info they needed without having to go dangerously far into enemy territory. I had to ask myself how someone who had not even graduated from the academy thought of this when no one else could. Plus, he is at the top of his class in every field including tracking and stealth. He can also summon snakes, which he told me could be used as a means of gathering info. As I said, I want Naruto, Shino, and Hinata, she explained while most of the Junins looked put out that Konohagakures, Demon Brat, had thought of something like this when they never did. Alright, Team 8 will be Mitarashi Naruto, Kami help you, Hyuga Hinata, and Aburame Shino under Yuehi Kurenai, said the Hokage while Kurenai laughed a little at the Kami help you part. I want Uchiha Sasuke, Inuzuka Kiba, and Haruno Sakura, stated a lazy-looking gray-haired Junin. Team 7 will be Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura, and Inuzuka Kiba under Hitaki Kakashi, said the third as he wrote the team down in a large scroll like he had done with Kurenai's team. I'll take the Ino Shika Cho team, said Asuma. Team 10 is going to be Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, and Nara Shikamaru under Sarutobi Asuma, said the third Hokage. This went on until everyone was picked. Once it got dark, the Hokage called for every shinobi in the village to search for Naruto because he had stolen the scroll of seals. He also held Anko and Kurenai back to explain what was really going on. Thank you for telling me, Hokage-sama. Now I'll only hurt him instead of killing him, said Anko as she and Kurenai went off to pretend to look for Naruto. Naruto, you idiot, where are you? Iruka asked himself as he ran through the woods looking for his favorite student. Finally, Iruka found Naruto at the side of a clearing, panting from exhaustion with the scroll tied to his back. I found you, he shouted, causing Naruto to jump. I guess you did, he said with a nervous laugh. He hadn't been planning on someone else finding him before Mizuki did. Well, that's okay. Now I can show you my new move and I'll pass this test, he said while using the lie he had been told. What do you mean, test? Asked Iruka. Mizuki-sensei told me that if I stole this scroll and could learn one move from it then I would pass the extra test, explained Naruto. That's why he looked exhausted. Has he been training the whole time? Iruka thought before his eyes widened and he pushed Naruto out of the way as a hail of kunai rained down upon him. Give me the scroll, Naruto, ordered Mizuki as he stood tall on a branch of a nearby tree. Why did you do that to Iruka-sensei? Asked Naruto as he played innocent. Naruto, Mizuki tricked you into stealing the scroll. Don't give it to him no matter what, shouted Iruka as he sank down the side of a small shack he had been leaning on. Naruto, there is no point in you having it. If you hand it over I'll telephone you the truth about who you are, offered Mizuki with a smirk. It was then that Iruka caught on to Naruto's little game. There was a reason, of course, why he had been selected among his peers to work as an academy instructor. There was also the fact that he had known the young blonde for many years and had learned how to read the young man so that he knew when to expect one of his pranks. No, you can't, he shouted as he played his part. The truth. What are you talking about? Demanded Naruto. Stop it, Mizuki. You know it's forbidden, shouted Iruka while inside he was laughing his off while wondering what Naruto had planned. Truth is that you are in fact, the nine-tailed fox that attacked Konohagakure 12 years ago, he said darkly. Naruto then let loose a blood-curdling scream as he sank to his knees and pounded his fist into the ground. Why? He shouted in a long drawn-out breath. Iruka was trying very hard not to laugh as Naruto overacted. Naruto, that was horrible, he said calmly. Naruto suddenly stopped screaming and looked at Iruka and smiled. Really? I thought that I would go for the dramatic approach. No, it was defiantly way over the top, said Iruka with mock sadness. What is going on here? Yelled Mizuki. I knew you were a traitor since you asked me to take the test. I told the Hokage and he let me play my little game, and as for the fox, I've known about him since I was 6 years old. Now, come down here so I can kill you, said Naruto calmly. Mizuki gave twisted smirk before he said, like you could kill me. I'll kill you both and take the scroll anyway. Whatever, said Naruto calmly as Mizuki jumped down from the tree and unhooked a Fuma shuriken from his back. Naruto held his fingers in front of his face in a cross shape and said, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique. Then suddenly Mizuki was surrounded by 5 Narutos. He mastered a B-rank jutsu that most Junin can't use in a matter of hours, thought Iruka as he watched in awe as the clones and Naruto began forming more hand seals. Sanejishu, they cried as 3 snakes shot out of each of their sleeves and sank their fangs into Mizuki. Getting bit by 30 highly poisonous snakes, and all Mizuki could do was make a slightly anticlimactic grunting sound before he fell over died. With their job done, the clones and snakes disappeared and the real Naruto walked over to Iruka and helped him to his feet. Come on, Iruka-sensei. Let's get you to the hospital, and after that I can get killed by Anko Nei-chan for not telling her about my plan beforehand. Poor kid, said Iruka as he and Naruto walked back towards the village while talking about how they thought Anko was going to kill him. After Naruto dropped Iruka off at the hospital, he used the body flicker to appear in the Hokage's office with the scroll. Here you go, Jii-san, he said as he handed over the scroll. This might be wishful thinking, but you didn't tell Anko Nei-chan about this, did you? Yes, he did, said a voice from behind him. Nei-chan, said Naruto happily while forgetting why he had been afraid. I passed and I'm a shoe-in for Rookie of the Year, and Hinata-chan passed as well. I even killed that traitor. He added slowly as he finally remembered why he didn't want Anko to know. Oh, I know all about that little stunt, she growled. She gave the Hokage a curt nod before grabbing Naruto and disappearing only to reappear outside their front door. She threw open the door and forced Naruto into the room where Kurenai was sitting, and her face made it clear that she was just as mad as Anko was. Please don't hurt me. I still haven't told Tenten-chan that I love her, he pleaded as Anko threw him roughly into a chair as she and Kurenai stood in front of him. Oh, we aren't going to kill you, said Anko with a wicked grin. We are going to hurt you badly but not kill you, added Kurenai. But, started Naruto before Anko cut him off. How dare you do something like that without telling me? She shouted. Did you know what it felt like to hear that you had stolen a forbidden scroll? I thought you had ran away. I thought you would be killed by the council. I thought you had left me. For the first time in a long time Naruto saw tears in his Nei-chan's eyes and the reality of what he had done finally sank in. As if a giant weight had been dropped on him, his shoulders and head sank. He couldn't even stand to look at her, he felt so bad. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You damn well better be, she yelled as she wiped the tears from her cheeks roughly. Would it help if I taught you the 2 jutsus I learned? He offered weakly. It might, Anko said as the corners of her mouth twitched. I learned the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, and the Bunshin Daibakua, clone great explosion, said Naruto, who still sounded very upset with himself. You learned them in one afternoon, shouted Kurenai while at the same time Anko shouted, I love you, before she pulled Naruto into a tight hug. Does this mean I'm forgiven? He asked softly. If you teach me those 2 moves then yes, all is forgiven, said Anko cooed lovingly as she gently ran a hand over his head, petting him as if he were a dog. The only people who know how to use shadow clones were the Hokages and their students. This meant that the 3rd Hokage, the Densetsu no Sannin, legendary 3 shinobi, and Hitaki Kakashi were the only ones alive, besides Naruto, to know this move, and none of them would teach anyone. Also, an exploding shadow clone sounded way too cool for her to pass up. Kurenai just sighed and shook her head. Before she had gotten her hands on Naruto, Anko was thinking up many ways to punish him without killing him, and now she was holding him tightly with just a promise to teach her 2 new jutsus. I said it before and I'll say it again. You 2 deserve each other, she muttered to where Anko and Naruto couldn't hear her. So did you use them tonight? Asked Anko. I used the Kage Bunshin with the Tsunejishu. It was so cool. I had 4 clones so I attacked with 30 snakes, he answered excitedly. But one of the best things about shadow clones is that whatever they learn gets transferred to you once they disappear. This would make scouting even easier. And think of the training you could do if you created some clones and fought them. You would increase your proficiency in leaps and bounds, said Anko, who seemed just as excited. Kurenai was also excited by now when she remembered that Naruto and all of his clones were on her team. This is going to be great, she said out loud. Why are you so excited? Do you want to learn it too? Asked Naruto with a smile. No, that's okay. I was just thinking about something else, she said quickly. That night Anko wouldn't let Naruto or Kurenai rest until she had mastered Kage Bunshin no Jutsu and Bunshin Daibakua. She found that she could only make a maximum of 5 clones of either kind while Naruto could make 30 without breaking a sweat. This didn't really bother her because when they sparred it would only help her in her chakra capacity. Finally at around 2 in the morning, Anko let them go to bed. She promised Naruto that she would get him up in the morning while Kurenai muttered something like, it doesn't matter if he's there if I'm still asleep. Later that morning it was actually Naruto who woke up first. Once he had taken his shower and got dressed he went into Anko's room to wake her and Kurenai up. Now, he was used to seeing the 2 in different states of undress, but seeing them mostly while holding each other was enough for even Naruto's nose to bleed a little. Once he cleaned that up he walked over to the bed and gently shook Kurenai, who was the closest to him. Hey, you 2 need to get up, he stated calmly. All right, she said sleepily as she started to wake up Anko while Naruto left them alone in the room. The next thing that happened scared Naruto far more than he was willing to admit. With a loud bang, a familiar brown-haired kunoichi kicked in the door and immediately leapt on Naruto as soon as she caught sight of him. Why didn't you tell me you passed? Shouted Tenten. The shock was enough to erase all traces of sleep from his system as he was now wide awake. I'm sorry Tenten-chan. After I passed I had something I had to do. Please forgive me, Naruto said softly. Tenten then realized that she was straddling the object of her affection and with a deep blush she jumped to her feet and said, Of course I'll forgive you. That is just cute enough to make me forget that you kicked in my door, stated Anko as she and Kurenai walked past them and into the kitchen. Sorry about that, said Tenten sheepishly. It's okay. Naru-chan, breakfast will be in a little bit and Tenten, you're more than welcome to stay, said Anko as she began cooking the food Kurenai handed her. Come on, Tenten said happily as she grabbed Naruto by the hand and dragged him back to his room. After staying in Anko's room for almost a year, she finally set Naruto up in one of the extra rooms. The room was filled with scrolls, different personal effects, a large bed, a dresser, and a very large fan. But if you ask Tenten, the best part was his bear Kuma-chan. Tenten loved this bear and loved it even more once Naruto told her and Hinata the story behind it. She also heard the story about Kuma-chan being Naruto's top advisor once he became Hokage from Anko, who seemed to enjoy telling embarrassing stories to people they knew, and in some cases to people they had only known long enough to get their names. As soon as she entered the room, Tenten jumped into the bed and grabbed Kuma-chan. I still can't believe that psycho, sadistic Mitarashi Naruto has a teddy bear named Kuma-chan, she teased softly as she laid on her back and held the bear in the air in front of her face. Naruto didn't hear this because all he could do was stare longingly at Tenten. He couldn't think of anything but how cute she looked, how she was, how smart, funny, and strong she was. Just then Naruto seemed to remember something Hinata had told him one night a few years ago. You can't run away from your problems. He was sure that she had stuttered during it, but it was basically what she had said. She's right, Naruto thought. I have to tell her how I feel, and if she doesn't feel the same, then at least I was honest with myself. Tenten-chan, can I talk to you? He asked nervously as he sat down on the edge of his bed. You already are, but you can talk some more if you want, she teased while Naruto couldn't help but smile at her joke. Tenten-chan, I have known you for 8 years, and for those 8 years you have been my best friend, along with Hinata-chan. But unlike Hinata-chan, I started having feelings for you that weren't for a best friend or Imouto, or Nei-chan in your case. I have been trying to tell you this for a while now, but I couldn't bring myself to tell you and have you not feel the same, but now I want to tell you, and if you don't feel the same, then that's okay. Tenten-chan, I really like you, I may even love you. You have been there for me whenever I needed you. You are beautiful, smart, strong, funny, and you can also be as gentle as Hinata-chan when you want to be. I think you're perfect, and he explained before Tenten cut him off by smashing her lips to his. Tenten pulled him on top of her as she wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him. After a few minutes of utter bliss, the two were brought back to reality, but a very amused-looking Anko and Kurenai. I believe he finally told her how he felt, Kurenai said with a giggle. And by the way they are making out, I'd say she feels the same. Anko added. Please tell me my Nei-chan isn't standing in the doorway, Naruto begged Tenten. She looked over his shoulder to find the two looking at them with large smiles on their faces. Laying her head back down on the bed, Tenten looked him in the eyes and said, I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but she is. Naruto blushed a deep red as he got off of Tenten and turned and pushed the two laughing females out of his room. That was embarrassing, he said as he shut the door and leaned back against it. I like you too, by the way, Tenten said as she got out of the bed and wrapped her arms around him and leaned her head on his chest. Would you like to be my girlfriend? He asked shyly. That depends, Tenten said with a smile. On whether or not you will kiss me again, she explained. Naruto smiled down at her and slowly brought his lips back to hers. This time the kiss was very soft and gentle as opposed to the rough and needy kiss they had shared a few moments ago. As he kissed her, he could taste cinnamon on her lips. He knew both she and Hinata loved cinnamon rolls, and she must have had some before she came and broke down their door. Once the two finally separated, Tenten sighed contentedly and said, Yes, I will be your girlfriend. Let's go get some breakfast. Although you might not need it since you had cinnamon rolls already this morning, he teased as he opened his door. How did you? She was going to ask before it clicked and she started blushing heavily but smiling nonetheless. It's about time. I was about to go in there with a bucket of water, said Anko, who Naruto could tell wasn't going to let them live this down for a long time. After the amount of times I've caught you and Kurenai in the couch, I think you can spot me a few times. Naruto said calmly as he began to eat his normal breakfast. An extra large bowl of ramen, a large plate of dango, and a large plate of eggs. Tenten snickered at the two as the proverbial rug was pulled out from under them. Shut up, Tenten, said Anko with a pout. This time Kurenai joined in on teasing her. Ah, you poor baby, she said as she lightly pinched Anko's cheeks. Stop that, she shouted, but she laughed all the same. Now, are you two dating now? Yes, answered Naruto firmly and with only a hint of a blush in his cheeks. Well, good. Now maybe you two will stop dancing around each other, said Anko. We weren't that bad, said Naruto defensively. Tenten on the other hand didn't look like she believed that. Were we really? Yes. It was cute for a while, but then it started getting pathetic. We were planning on locking you in a closet if you didn't get together soon, said Anko. We could still lock you in a closet if you wanted us to, offered Kurenai while she and Anko laughed at the blush that crept onto the thoughtful-looking faces of Naruto and Tenten. Shut up, you two, shouted Naruto. But Naru-chan, don't you want to be in a closet with your girlfriend? Asked Anko innocently. Of course I do. I mean, shut up, he shouted as he turned away from Tenten as his slip-up caused him to have all kinds of thoughts that were causing his nose to bleed a little. Can we please talk about something else? Asked Tenten pleadingly. While she was a little embarrassed from their teasing, she was also very happy to finally be dating Naruto and to know that he liked her as much as he did. Okay, we'll leave you two alone, for now, said Kurenai softly while Anko agreed but didn't look happy about it. Fine. Are you excited about finding out who is on your team? Anko asked Naruto. Naruto nodded as he sighed in relief that the teasing was over for now. Yes. I really hope I get the team I told you two about yesterday. What team would that be? Asked Tenten. I want to be on a team with Hinata-chan, Shino, and Kurenai, he answered as his eyes gleamed with excitement at the possibility. Kurenai smiled slightly at this, and while she knew who was on his team, she had decided that it would be better as a surprise than for her to tell him. That would be a pretty strong scout team, said Tenten thoughtfully. I never knew why there weren't more people like you, Anko, and Ibiki on scout teams. I mean, a scout team's objective is to gather info, and who better to do that than someone who is well versed in torture and interrogation. Anko sighed and turned to Kurenai. We really need to start listening to the younger shinobi's suggestions. To which Kurenai simply nodded in agreement. Why? Asked Naruto. Most veteran shinobi don't believe that new genin or even experienced genin have anything worthwhile to say. None of us had ever thought of putting an interrogation specialist on a scout team, and now that was suggested we can't figure out why we hadn't, explained Kurenai. And while it would work out better, there just isn't a lot of people willing to do what we do. Ibiki, Naru-chan, and I are only 3 of the few in the village that are willing to do this job, and of the ones that will, even fewer of them are any good at it, finished Anko. You mean that the same shinobi that can be called on to kill children don't want to interrogate someone? Asked Tenten, who couldn't seem to figure out their reasoning. I don't know. Some people are just weird, answered Anko while Naruto and her smiled at each other. Calling someone else weird was always a good joke for them, seeing as the two were as strange as they come. Yeah, and you two are so very normal, said Kurenai dryly. Well, if that is how you feel, then I'm leaving, stated Naruto pompously as he stood. I'll walk with you to the academy, Tenten said as she and Naruto disappeared in a swirl of leaves only to appear right outside the fence. Once they started walking, Tenten slid her hand into Naruto's and leaned against him. I was so nervous right before I started to tell you, and now look at us, commented Naruto as he raised their hands so that she could look at them. I am so glad you did. I was just about to start yelling at you for not asking me out, she joked. Knowing you, you probably would have. Then you would beat me up and drag my body on a date, said Naruto lightly. You always were forceful when it came to something you wanted. And in this case I really wanted you. Tenten replied softly. The two walked slowly while speaking quietly before they reached the academy and found a smiling Hinata waiting for them. How do you do that? Asked Naruto. No matter when he came to school she was always there, and wherever he would arrive at she would be there. Wouldn't you like to know? But the important question is, what is this? She asked as she arched one of her elegant eyebrows and pointed to their hands. Well, Tenten-chan decided to break down my front door this morning because I hadn't told her I passed the test. While we were in my room I remembered something you said about not running away from your problems, so I told her how I felt and she jumped on me and, rather forcefully, told me she liked me too, explained Naruto with a bright smile while Tenten blushed guiltily. Sounds like her, teased Hinata. So how much did Anko-senpai and Kurenai-senpai make fun of you? At this Naruto and Tenten both sighed. More than I hoped they would, answered Naruto. Hinata shook her head and replied. I thought you knew them better than that, Naruto-kun. Shut up Hinata-chan, said Naruto but with a smile. I've got to go meet the two freaks in the prick, said Tenten sadly as she squeezed Naruto's hand. I'll just wait inside, Hinata said quickly before she ran into the room. I'm not sure who I get or how long the meeting will be, but do you want to come over tonight? Hinata-chan will more than likely be there as well if she and I make it onto the same team, he asked. I'll be there, she promised before kissing Naruto lightly on the lips and running off to meet her team. Naruto couldn't help but watch her as she left. More accurately, he watched certain parts of her as she left. I'm in trouble, he thought as he finally turned and walked into the classroom. This time the class stopped talking and stared at him in shock. Who are you? Shouted Inuzuka Kiba. This boy was almost as loud as Lee and Guy but only half as weird looking. He always wore a bulky coat and always had his companion with him. The Inuzuka clan specializes in man-beast styles jutsus. For this reason they were bonded with a dog at the moment of birth. Akamaru, Kiba's dog, was usually found sleeping on top of Kiba's head. What are you talking about, dog boy? Asked Naruto. Naruto never walks in through the door. So who are you? He shouted. Naruto sighed and asked, what do I have to do to prove that I am me? Kiba started thinking, but it was Sakura who asked the question. Who do you like? Tenten-chan. Naruto said quickly. There. Naruto never admits to liking Tenten. Kiba shouted again and this time Naruto's sweat dropped. I admit it now because we started dating. He shouted back but the class, minus Hinata and Iruka, looked largely unconvinced. Those two knew that it was Naruto but they were too busy laughing at him to help. A likely story, said Ino. Ino was a girl with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes and she always wore a purple skirt and sleeveless shirt with wrappings around her torso and upper legs. That's it, Naruto shouted before he bit his thumb and flew through some hand signs. Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique. With a large puff of smoke a very large snake appeared. The snake was easily long enough to wrap around the room and large enough to eat any one of them without any trouble. The sudden appearance of the snake caused many to scream and Ino and Sakura to jump onto their desks as if that would put them out of reach of the giant snake. Naruto, why have you summoned me? Asked the snake as it lowered its large head to Naruto's. I finally walked through the door and they didn't believe that it was me. He shouted. The snake hissed a laugh before looking back to the class. Would you like for me to eat them? It's been so long since you've summoned me to dispose of a foolish villager. Sorry but I need them. But don't worry, I'm a genin now and I can summon you to eat my enemies. Naruto said happily. Most of the class knew that Naruto had killed any villager or shinobi he heard speaking ill of Anko and Kurenai but they never knew how, and now that they did most of them wished they didn't. My Jii-san told me to tell you that you and Anko are close to your rights, said the snake before he disappeared. Yes, shouted Naruto after he heard the snake's message before grabbing Hinata and dancing around the room. Naruto, what are your rights? Asked Iruka as the class settled down and took their seats. When someone signs the snake contract they have to summon a lower level snake and prove to them that you are worthy. This is the only real way you can get to summon the boss or any of the higher level summons. Some people, like that Orochimaru, ignore this and summon Manda whenever they want. This makes Manda very angry, and if you can get him to listen to you, then it costs a sacrifice of 100 men, but most of the time he will simply eat the summoner. Anko Ne-chan and I are close to our rights, meaning that we're close to being able to summon Manda without the sacrifice. Naruto explained happily while most were shocked at how harsh the snake contract was. Anko-chan will be happy to hear that, said Kurenai as she and 8 other Junins walked into the room. Class, these are the Junin senseis you will be paired with. Each 3-man team with go with their instructor after I finish listing everyone. Now, wait, where the hell is Kakashi? Asked Iruka as he rubbed his head in frustration. Probably reading, growled Kurenai while the other senseis inched away from her. It was very well known that Kurenai hated perverts and their preferred reading material. Well, okay, said Iruka nervously before he started listing names and teams, most of which Naruto didn't pay attention to. Quote. Team 7 will Inuzuka Kiba, Uchiha Sasuke, and Haruno Sakura under Hatake Kakashi. Yes, screamed Sakura as she jumped to her feet, pumped her fist into the air. I'm glad you approve, Sakura, now please sit down. Iruka said in exasperation. Team 8 will be Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and. Here he trailed off as Naruto and Hinata leaned forward in suspense. Does anyone need a bathroom break? He asked. Naruto jumped to his feet and shouted. You read that name right the now, you asshole. In Mitarashi Naruto under Uehi Kurenai. Iruka read quickly. Yes, shouted Hinata and Naruto before hugging each other happily. Then the last named clicked and Naruto turned to his new sensei. You bitch. Why didn't you tell me? He shouted. That is, bitch sensei, to you, worm, sneered Kurenai playfully. And I didn't tell you because that would ruin the surprise. If you 3 are done, asked Iruka weakly before he read Team 9 quickly as Naruto and Kurenai turned their glares towards him. Quote. Team 10 will be Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, and Nara Shikamaru under Sarutobi Asuma. That is everyone, so please follow your sensei, except for Team 7 who will be waiting a while, for your team meeting. And with that, Team 8 followed their new sensei to a nearby training ground where they began their meeting. Kurenai chose to stand and Shino leaned back against a large tree while Naruto and Hinata sat down near the quiet boy, Hinata sitting a little closer than necessary. To start off with, I want you to introduce yourselves. I want your names, likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams or goals for the future, and what your specialties are. Kurenai said with a warm smile. Naru-chan, you can start. I told you to stop calling me that. He shouted while Kurenai just smiled. My name is Mitarashi Naruto. I like my Ne-chan, Tenten-chan and her family, Hinata-chan, Kurenai-sensei, Ibiki, the 3rd Hokage, and Iruka. I also like training, sparring with Hinata-chan and Tenten-chan, and ramen, dango, and eggs. My dislikes are unjust prejudices towards female shinobi, my Ne-chan, and myself. I also dislike the Uchiha Tem, and most of the villagers in this village. My hobbies are spending time with those I like, training with Anko Ne-chan, and working alongside Anko Ne-chan and Ibiki on the rare times they will let me. My dream is to become Hokage and prove to everyone that I am more than they see me as. My skills are in torture, interrogation, snake and poison jutsus, poisons themselves, and taijutsu. Mr. Silent, you're up, said Kurenai to Shino. I am Aburame Shino. I like my insects. I dislike people who would kill an insect for no reason. My hobbies are collecting more insects. My dream is to become a worthy leader of my clan. I am skilled in tracking, and my family's jutsus. Shino said quietly and without ever changing his tone. No need to get too worked up, Shino, joked Naruto. Shino's only reply was pushing his sunglasses back up his nose. Shino was tall for his age, just above Naruto in height. He had slightly pale skin and black hair. The only thing they could tell that he wore was his black round sunglasses, a long gray trench coat, not unlike Naruto's but with a higher collar, that was always closed, and a pair of black boots. Hinata, go ahead, Kurenai said once she saw that Shino wasn't going to say anything. My name is Hyuga Hinata. My likes are Naruto-kun, Anko-senpai, Tenten-chan and her family, Kurenai-sensei, flower pressing, the insects in the garden who help it grow, and a certain other person. At this she glanced at Shino quickly. My dislikes are how my family treats me, and how the village treats Naruto-kun and Anko-senpai. My hobbies are mostly the same as my likes, plus spending time, and training, with Naruto-kun and Tenten-chan. My dream is to prove that I am not the mistake and failure my clan seems to think I am. I am good at my family's taijutsu style and scouting. Nodding her head, Kurenai said. My name is Yuahi Kurenai. My likes are Anko-chan, Ibiki-kun, Naru-chan and his friends. My dislikes are a lot like Naruto's. My hobbies are creating new genjutsus and going out and sparring with Anko-chan. My dream is to live with Anko-chan and prove that females are just as good as males when it comes to being a shinobi. I am a genjutsu mistress and I am known as the best in Konohagakure. My taijutsu and ninjutsus are Junin level and my tracking skills rival that of the Inuzukas. So what now? Asked Naruto. Now I shock you all by telling you that you aren't really Genin. She said happily while her team varied in their reactions. Shino simply raised both of his eyebrows, Hinata's eyes went wide, and Naruto stared at her with his mouth open. What the hell do you mean? We passed that test, he finally shouted. That test was to get rid of the truly hopeless cases. Each Junin sensei is to give their own test to see whether or not they believe their team is ready or if they want to even bother. If you pass then you will become Genin. If you fail you will go back to the academy, she explained with an Anko-like smirk. Our chances? Asked Shino. Very low. More often than not only 3 teams will pass their sensei's test. I will give you one hint. In the shinobi world things are rarely what they seem, she answered. Now, this is training ground 8. If you pass my test and become team 8 then this will be our training ground. Meet me here tomorrow morning at 5 a.m., and don't be late. And with that she disappeared. The 3 would-be Genin stared at the spot she had been standing in disbelief. Well that sucks, shouted Naruto. He knew that he could hold his own against any Genin or Chunin but having to take a test from a Junin would even push his skills to the limit. Oh well, who wants to go get something to eat? My treat. Okay, said Hinata softly. Shino looked at him for a few moments before nodding. I'll get us there faster, Naruto said as he placed a hand on their shoulders before disappearing. I should have known, said Hinata once they appeared in front of the Ichiraku ramen bar. Shino, do you like ramen? Naruto asked as the 3 walked in and sat down as the counter. It is acceptable, he answered. Well then you have never had my ramen, said Tuki as he came to take their order. I have not, admitted the boy. I'll have 3 bowls of beef ramen, 3 of shrimp, and 3 of your chili ramen, ordered Naruto as he all but drooled on the counter. 1 miso ramen please, ordered Hinata. I will have 1 bowl of beef ramen and 1 of the chili ramen, ordered Shino. Coming right up, Tuki said brightly as he walked back to begin on their orders. Hello Naruto-kun, Hinata-chan, said Ayame as she came out of the back and saw Naruto and Hinata and once she spotted Shino she asked. And who is this? This is Shino, our soon-to-be teammate. Shino this is Ayame-chan. She and her 2-san own this place, said Naruto. So this is Shino, she said with a smile as she shot Hinata a quick look. Do you know me? He asked. I know of you. Some of our customers have spoken of you, and in glowing terms might I add, she said while Hinata gave her a pleading look. He said simply before falling silent. It wasn't long after that when Tuki brought out their orders and the 3 began eating. Shino was a little shocked by the speed at which Naruto ate but he didn't say anything. He also wondered how he was so fit if he ate like this all the time. He then turned his attention to his own food and as he took a bite of his ramen he couldn't help but say. This is very good. Tuki-san makes the best ramen in the village, said Hinata after she swallowed what she had in her mouth. Does he always eat like that? He asked Hinata. Hinata turned and saw Naruto starting on his fifth bowl and said, yes. Naruto-kun has a very high metabolism and can eat like that and never feel the adverse effects like weight gain. You have known each other for a long time, haven't you? He asked. He didn't say it, but this was the most he had spoken to anyone outside of his family, but he figured that with Naruto on his team he was going to have to get used to speaking more, and he found that Hinata was very easy to talk to. Since we were 4. I met him when he beat up some bullies on the playground near the Hokage Tower. I was being picked on and Naruto-kun came and chased them away. Of course he stabbed one of them with a kunai and kicked the other 2 between the legs before they would leave, answered Hinata while Naruto gave Ayame a new order of ramen. So he has always been rather violent. For the most part. Being raised by Anko-senpai has brought a lot of that out, but believe me when I say that Naruto-kun has had a very hard life and, like Anko-senpai, he uses his work as a means to vent his anger. He is also very kind to those who get to know him, and he will defend you from anything from someone calling you names to someone threatening your life. Hinata said quietly so that only Shino could hear. Will he tell me about his life? He asked. Once he gets to know you and you gain his trust, she answered. I am glad you are on our team, Aburame-san. I am starting to like this team as well, and please, call me Shino, he said before he pushed his 2 empty bowls away. He never noticed the light blush and pleased look on Hinata's face. By the end of the meal Shino had finished his 2 bowls, Hinata her 1, and Naruto finally stopped after an even 12. All in all, Tsuki was more than happy to take Naruto's money once they decided to leave. I must be going. I am looking forward to working with you, said Shino as he gave them a slight bow before walking off. Hinata-chan, Tenten-chan is coming over later, do you want to come? Naruto asked. No, I think I'll let you 2 be alone, she said suggestively. I never thought that I would say this, but, Hinata-chan, you pervert. Nothing like that will be happening, Naruto said firmly. Hinata looked at him and gave him her best teary, doe-eyed look and asked innocently. Naruto-kun, what are you talking about? I just thought that I would leave you alone to talk. What did you think I meant? I know damn well what you meant, so don't try and use those cute eyes of yours to get out of this one. Seriously, if you want to come over you're more than welcome to, he said as they stared towards Hinata's house nonetheless. No, all perverted joke aside, I really do want to give you some time alone with your new girlfriend, she said calmly. Thanks, Naruto said as he sighed in relief. I do want you there, but I also want to be alone with Tenten-chan. I tell you what, I'll talk to Shino and see how he feels about you. Then maybe we can go on a double date. That would be nice, said Hinata shyly as they reached her home. Well, have fun, but not too much fun, she teased before hugging him and walking inside. Naruto watched her until the door closed before he used the body flicker to appear right outside his front door. Once he entered he found Anko and Kurenai sitting at the kitchen table with Tenten showing her pictures of Naruto as he grew up. Anko had always seemed to know that the 2 would get together, so she hid some stories and pictures from Tenten until they got together. This photo album just happened to be the one from just after he had met Tenten, and while he didn't believe that it was terribly embarrassing, it was still something Naruto wished Tenten hadn't seen. Do you live to embarrass me? He asked his Nei-chan and Kurenai as he walked around behind them to see what they were looking at. Once he saw the pictures he groaned and blushed. He had been wrong. These were some of the most embarrassing pictures of him there were. They showed the very first time Anko had let Ibiki and Kurenai babysit him when he was still 4, and in the picture Naruto was running from Ibiki, who seemed to be about ready to cry. Yes I do, answered Anko calmly while Tenten looked up at him and smiled. Naruto glared at her playfully before saying, I got my team. So who is it? Kurenai-chan wouldn't tell us. Anko shouted with a glare to her best friend and lover. I got Hinata-chan, Shino, and Kurenai, he answered happily while Tenten cheered and hugged him. You never told me, Anko shouted at Kurenai. I wanted it to be a surprise, she said defensively. Besides, it was worth it to see his and Hinata's faces once they heard. Anko looked excited and asked, "Did you get a picture?" "Of course," Kurenai said as if it were obvious. "Hey Kurenai, would you please tell me what test you are going to give us?" Naruto begged. Kurenai shook her head and said, "Nope. If you are going to be on my team then I want you to earn it. Now why don't you take Tenten into your room and we'll call you once dinner is ready." "Okay," said Naruto quickly as Tenten stood and the two walked into his room. He was a little caught off guard when Tenten pulled him into a kiss as soon as the door was closed. The two continued to kiss as they made their way towards the bed before Naruto backed into it and fell back while pulling Tenten down with him. "Hello," he said breathlessly as Tenten rolled off of him and laid down beside him. "Hi," she replied softly. "Is Hinata-chan coming?" "No, she said that she wanted to give was time alone. She also made some perverted comments about us being alone," he answered with a slight smile. "You know you caused me some problems today." "How?" "I wasn't thinking right after you left and I walked into the classroom through the door. No one would believe that I was me until I summoned a snake," he said. "Did I mess you up that badly?" asked Tenten innocently. "Yes, but it was rather nice," he teased. "I'm glad because I don't plan on stopping so you were going to have to suffer though our kisses if you didn't like it." "Then it's a good thing I do then." Tenten then rolled back on top of him and started kissing him again. She surprised him when she gently ran her tongue over his lips, asking permission to enter. Once the shock went away he was more than willing to let her do whatever she wanted. As soon as their tongues touched, Naruto and Tenten both moaned into each other's mouth before deepening the kiss as much as they could. Before long Naruto was having blood flow problems and pulled away. Tenten looked confused and a little hurt until Naruto said, "Tenten-chan, we need to stop or something might happen that we aren't ready for." Tenten looked confused until she saw the slight bulge in his pants and blushed. "Sorry about that," she said shyly. "Believe me, it's no problem, but my body is far more willing to continue than I am ready for." Naruto was as he turned on his side and faced Tenten. "I'm not ready for much more than kissing myself. I didn't know you would react like that," she said softly. Naruto laughed a little and asked, "How else would I react when my beautiful girlfriend is laying on top of me with her tongue in my mouth? Not to mention the effects my hormones are having on my mind and body." "Are you saying that you didn't like it?" she asked lightly. "Hell no. I loved it, but that seemed to cause the problem to begin with," he said with a laugh. "Well, I for one am glad you find me so attractive," she said with a smile as she moved in closer to him and laid against his chest. "Tenten-chan, you are beautiful," Naruto stated. "Do you like me more than Kuma-chan?" she asked with a completely straight face. "Jealous that she gets to sleep with me?" he teased while Tenten's mask seemed to be breaking. "I don't know. Kuma-chan has always been with me, but you are human and dead. She is a teddy bear while you are my girlfriend, and again, you're human. She is always nice and quiet while you made me eat dirt as a kid." At this Tenten began laughing. She had almost forgotten that she had done that, and now that she remembered she laughed like she had when it first happened. I see can't be believe you are remembered, that," she said in between gasps for air as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Of course I remembered. I've been plotting my revenge all these years," he said evilly. "Oh, really?" asked as she started to gain control over herself again. "Oh yes. I had to wait until we were alone and you trusted me before I could exact my unholy revenge," he stated. "And what is it?" she asked with a smile. "This," Naruto shouted as he hopped to his knees and began tickling her. "Stop," she shouted as she began laughing loudly. "Never. This is revenge, unholy revenge at that. I can't just stop because you ask me," he said as he continued to tickle the defenseless girl, who was squirming and crying as she roared with laughter. "PP please," she shouted. "What's in it for me?" he asked as he moved up her sides, making her, if it were possible, laugh even harder. A kiss," she offered. "Okay," said Naruto as he suddenly stopped. "Why you?" said Tenten as she slapped him in the arm and wiped her eyes and cheeks. You know you love me, he said in a sing-song tone of voice. Yes I do, but I don't know why, she countered. Then let me show you, he said before he gently pulled Tenten into another kiss. This kiss lasted until Kurenai knocked on the door and told them that dinner was done. Sighing softly, Naruto stood up and helped Tenten out of his bed before the two walked into the kitchen where they found Anko and Kurenai looking at them with identical smirks on their faces. You know, for making out there was a lot of laughing, Anko said offhandedly as they began to fill their plates. We weren't making out, Naruto shouted before Tenten gave a small cough. Well, we weren't just making out. Naru-chan, I believe that it's about time we had a little talk. You see, when a man and a woman love, Kurenai started before Naruto jumped to his feet and shouted. Leave us alone. Besides, you know damn well that I've already had that talk as you two were the ones that gave it to me. You just want to embarrass me. Anko suddenly looked highly offended. How could you? We're just worried about you and you shout at us. We only had the best of intentions at heart. And whose intentions were you serving? He asked calmly while Tenten snickered as the two older females suddenly looked uncomfortable. Anko knew they had been caught, so she decided to play her trump card. Have you spoke with Tenten's parents about dating her yet? She asked. As soon as the words were out of her mouth, both Tenten and Naruto dropped their chopsticks and paled. After one fearful look at her new boyfriend, Tenten asked. Naruto-kun, do you want to talk to them when you walk me home? Naruto looked thoughtful as he weighed his options. On one hand, he could go with Tenten, face her parents and probably come out of the discussion with a few cuts and bruises. On the other, he could let Tenten go home alone, which would upset her, and then he would have Anko, Kurenai, Hinata, Kenshin, Emi, and Tenten mad at him. Needless to say that it took him all of 2 seconds before he chose. I'll speak with them when I walk you home, he stated firmly while Anko and Kurenai smiled approvingly and Tenten hugged him tightly before kissing him quickly on the cheek. Thank you, Naruto-kun, she said softly. It was a pretty easy decision to make. I can handle facing your two-san and ka-san, but if I made you upset it would kill me, and I mean that both emotionally and physically, because Anko-ne-chan, Kurenai, and Hinata-chan would kill me if I hurt you, he reasoned while the three women laughed at this but couldn't help but agree. Well, I'm glad you learned from your time with me, said Anko happily. How could I not? If I messed up you would carve the correct answer into my hide. I wasn't that bad. Need I remind you of the time I told you that you looked tired? Asked Naruto calmly. No, muttered a defeated Anko. Good. Now after dinner I want you to do your homework and go to bed, ordered Naruto playfully. Okay, said Anko with an exaggerated pout. This pout quickly became a smile as she and Naruto began to laugh while Tenten and Kurenai started wondering why they loved them so much. The rest of dinner was great if anyone had asked Naruto and Tenten. Why was it great? Because Anko and Kurenai hadn't made fun of them for the rest of the meal. Naruto believed that it was because they knew what he was going to do after dinner and they were taking pity on him. Tenten thought this too, but she tried to convince herself that they were just nice. This tactic didn't work for very long. Finally the meal ended and Naruto and Tenten began walking back to her house while holding hands and talking about every little thing that came to mind. That was what was so great about talking with a best friend like Tenten or Hinata. They had known each other for 8 years and understood each other, even when they said something that most people would have been insulted by. They each know the others inside and out and never got hung up on something that the other, mostly Naruto, had said. Is it just me or do you look very beautiful tonight? Asked Naruto. Are you saying that I look ugly every other night? Asked Tenten playfully. Naruto's eyes widened and he stammered for a few moments before he took a deep breath and said. No, you look beautiful every day. What I meant was that it is nice to be with you and know that you like me. The last year has been torture for me. To know that I liked you and that I couldn't have you. You, Tenten-chan, are a tease. Tenten tried her best to look innocent at the accusation. Whatever do you mean, Naruto-kun? Naruto thought she looked very cute, but he knew her well enough to know that she was never innocent. You know damn well what I mean. The way you would walk so close to me and speak softly. Damn it, he shouted. At this, Tenten looked very confused and startled. What? She asked quickly. Nothing. I just realized that you did all those things because you liked me. How could I have not have seen it? You were distracted by my stunning good looks, joked Tenten. How can you be so modest? He asked with mock awe. It's a gift. Whatever you say. I only wish I had noticed sooner. You know, you weren't the only one to miss the stolen looks and to misread the signs. You did all the things I did and I never put two and two together. Don't think about what could have been, Naruto-kun. It will only distract you from what is in front of you now. Naruto looked at Tenten and rose an eyebrow. Where did that come from? He asked. I read it in a book once, she admitted with a slight blush. Are you sure that the book wasn't actually a fortune cookie? Yes, I'm sure. Tenten shouted before punching him in the arm none too lightly. Don't be a jerk, Naruto-kun. She added as she turned her back to him and huffed. I'm not being a jerk. That did sound like something a fortune cookie would say. I wasn't trying to make fun of you, Tenten-chan. Please forgive me, he pleaded as he stepped up right behind her and wrapped his arms around her. He then kissed her softly on the back of her neck, which caused her to shiver slightly. That's not fair, she stated softly as she hugged Naruto's arms to her chest. I know, and I really wasn't trying to make fun of you, he said gently as he rested his chin on her shoulder and leaned his head against hers. I know you weren't. Now, let's go tell my two-san that we are dating and hope that there is enough left of you to date afterwards. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Why couldn't your two-san be a seamstress or something and not a blacksmith with a house full of weapons? Asked Naruto weakly as he let her go and the two continued their walk towards her house. Once they were standing outside the front door, Naruto turned and tried to run only to find Tenten standing there with her arms crossed. Going somewhere? She asked dangerously. I thought I saw a lost kitten. Come on, we have to save it, he said with as much enthusiasm as he could muster. Which wasn't a lot. Tenten did crack a smile at the lame excuse, but she could play dirty. Giving him her best puppy dog look, she asked. Naruto-kun, why do you want to run? Don't you want to be with me? Won't you talk to my two-san if it means that we can be together? Naruto's mouth opened and closed a few times before he sighed and his shoulders slumped. You don't play fair. Come on, he muttered as he and a smiling Tenten walked into the house to find Emi and Kenshin talking while Kenshin polished a beautiful sword that made Naruto very nervous. Ka-san, two-san. Naruto-kun wants to speak to you, said Tenten quickly before she ran from the room as fast as she could. Naruto watched her going in disbelief. She had left him alone to tell her two-san and Ka-san that they were dating. She will pay, vowed Naruto before gulping as Emi and Kenshin looked at him questioningly. Did you need something? Asked Emi while Naruto's eyes never strayed from the sword. Why yes, said Naruto nervously. You both have taken care of me for years while Anko Ne-chan and Kurenai sensei were away on missions. You know I love your family and think of it as my own and that I would never do anything to harm a member of this family. This morning when Tenten-chan came over, I finally told her how I felt and she told me that she felt the same. More like I, since she ran out of here like a bat out of hell, wanted to tell you what we're dating and hope that you approve. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, Naruto watched Kenshin's grip on the sword tighten as he got to his feet and walked towards the much smaller Naruto. Even without any form of shinobi training, Kenshin's sheer size made him one of the most intimidating people in the village. At 6 feet 10 inches and 340 pounds of pure muscle, he was a sight to behold, and at this moment Naruto wished he was anywhere else in the world. Even the jaws of the Kyuubi seemed like a much more inviting place than his current position in front of the massive blacksmith. So, you want to date my Masumi? Asked the hulking man. No. Naruto said nervously. What? Asked Emi, who was surprised by his answer. I'm not asking. I'm telling you that we are dating, and while we would like your blessing, it is not something we need, stated Naruto firmly as he looked eyes with Kenshin while refusing to look away. You've got some nerve, kid. He growled, and yet Naruto refused to budge. Even when Kenshin lifted the sword and swung it down towards his neck, he didn't move. Finally, a smile broke out across the man's face. I'm glad you finally told her how you felt, because if I had to listen to another night of, do you think Naruto-kun likes me, or, why won't he ask me out? Am I ugly? I swear I was going to go crazy. As soon as this was said, Naruto let out a deep breath and looked about ready to faint. On shaky knees, he walked over to a chair and sat beside a smiling Emi. You okay? She asked sweetly. Naruto rolled his head to the side and looked at her. Shut up. Emi just smiled and said. For what it's worth, I'm happy for the two of you. I was worried that you would never tell each other and be miserable for the rest of your life. So, did you kiss yet? This question caught Kenshin's attention and Naruto to gain a glazed over look. Yeah, and it was great. Tenten-chan is really a great kisser. He said dreamily before he remembered where he was and with whom he was speaking to. He jumped out of his seat just in time for a sword to slice it in two. With a fearful look around the room, Naruto took off out the door while Emi laughed loudly at her Shujin's cursing and the young man's sudden departure. Once Naruto was out the door, Tenten hung her head out of her window and called out to him. Naruto was thankful for the fact that Tenten's window was larger than any other in the house as he jumped into the air and into her room. How could you run off like that? He hissed quietly as he and Tenten walked over to her bed and sat down. Opposed to Anko's room being the opposite of what people might think, Tenten's was exactly what it should have been. The walls were painted a pale red and she had blueprints for weapon making hanging all over her walls, where most girls her age had posters of a band or the all-too-common poster of a popular male idol. A bed, dresser, and mirror were all that was in there, besides stacks of weapons and targets. I'm sorry. I freaked out and ran. Please forgive me, she pleaded as she took Naruto's hand in hers. Of course I do, and everything went fine until the part where your two-san split the chair I was sitting in two with that sword. Although I did have that coming, he said softly so that her parents didn't know he was still here. How? Asked Tenten, who couldn't see how Naruto deserved to be killed. Naruto blushed a little and rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Well, your Ka-san asked if we had kissed, and I was so caught up in remembering our kisses that I told them that we had and that you were a great kisser. Now it was Tenten's turn to blush. She then gave Naruto a small smile and kissed him gently on the lips. In no time the two forgot where they were and began to explore each other's mouth with increasing vigor. Luckily the stairs in the home were squeaky and let the two teens know that Tenten's parents were coming up the stairs. Very quickly, Naruto jumped off of Tenten and out the window after a quick kiss and a promise to see her the next day. Before long, Naruto was standing just inside his apartment while leaning against the door with an amused-looking Kurenai and Anko looking on. You're not dead, stated Anko, who tried to sound surprised. No, but very nearly, muttered Naruto as he walked over to them and flopped down between them on the couch. Tenten-chan ran for it as soon as we saw her parents and left me to talk to them. Everything went fine. I mean, they gave their blessing and everything, until Emi asked if we had kissed. By now Anko and Kurenai were both laughing and snickering respectively while Naruto ignored them and continued. I'm still new to kissing, so I kind of forgot where I was and said that Tenten-chan wasn't a great kisser. Emi just laughed, but Kenshin didn't find it at all funny. So, after he sliced through my chair with a sword, I ran for it. Anko and Kurenai were both laughing loudly by the end of the story, and while they did feel sorry for Naruto, they simply found it entirely too funny not to laugh. Don't worry. Kenshin might die soon. Other than that, I don't see him forgetting what you said Anko in her own reassuring way. I doubt it. Not many could kill him, argued Kurenai. True. Naru-chan, it would be best to never go back over there again, joked Anko. Some help you two are. I'm going to bed, he growled as he stood and stomped off towards his room, only to stop as he reached his door. Good night, he called back to them. Good night, they shouted back. With that, Naruto walked into his room and fell onto his bed in a very ungraceful way. Reaching out, Naruto turned on his fan and picked up Kuma-chan and before saying, I can't believe my luck. I'm dating Tenten-chan and I got the team I wanted. You are really turning out to be a good luck charm, Kuma-chan. Of course the bear said nothing, but Naruto didn't expect it to. With a content sigh, Naruto closed his eyes and enjoyed the wind blowing across his face and shoulders. It didn't take long before the droning sound of the fan combined with the relaxing feel of the wind caused Naruto fell asleep. 5 in the morning comes all too early for a young man dreaming of his girlfriend. The only reason Naruto finally did manage to wake up was properly because he had accidentally rolled out of his bed and fell to the flood with a heavy thud. Does that mean you are up? Asked a voice from the other side of his door. Naruto muttered something incoherent before he untangled himself from his sheet and pulled himself to his feet. Opening the door, Naruto found Kurenai standing before him smiling brightly. It's too early to be that happy, he muttered as he pushed past a now laughing Kunoichi and made his way towards the kitchen only to find his Nae-san already awake and putting the finishing touches on breakfast. Come on Naru-chan. I know for a fact Anko-chan used to wake you up at ungodly hours to beat you. I mean train you, replied Kurenai as a still sleepy-looking Anko glared at her for her slip. Key word is used. She stopped doing that once she realized that it was cutting into her beauty sleep too much. Why is everyone picking on me? Whined Anko as she set their breakfast on the table. Because it's fun and easy, Kurenai stated happily. Just like you, Kurenai-sensei. Naruto added brightly before he had to dodge a few pairs of chopsticks from the angry brunette. Watch it or I will make your test even harder, she growled while Anko simply sat back and laughed as they glared at each other, daring the other to try anything more. The staring contest quickly ended when Naruto's stomach growled and he was forced to turn his attention back to his food. The rest of the meal was done in a comfortable silence and with only a few odd jokes here and there, again mostly at the expense of Naruto. Once they were done and Naruto had finished putting everything in the sink, he asked, What time is it anyway? Just after 4. Anko answered as she and Kurenai walked back to their room to start getting ready for the day. Why did I wake up so soon? I thought it was almost 5. He cried pitifully as he slowly made his way back towards his room. Would you rather have slept in and missed breakfast? Kurenai asked calmly from behind their bedroom door. I think you know that answer to that, stated Naruto from his room. They both laughed a little and agreed. Naruto never missed a meal unless something very important happened. As far as they could remember, it has only happened twice. Once then he and Tenten spent the day with Hinata after her Ka-san passed away, and then the second time was when he had accidentally stabbed Tenten in the stomach with a kunai when they were younger. He had spent an entire afternoon apologizing and waiting on her hand and foot before she finally tired of it and kicked him out of her house. So, are you excited? Anko asked as she and Kurenai stood in his doorway as he pulled on his shirt, or rather want counted as a shirt in their family, and coat. I'm slightly more scared than excited. You trained me very well, but Kurenai could think up anything. She also knows my training from you very well and could make us do something she knows I can't do, he admitted as he followed them back to the kitchen where they sat down and had some tea before they all had to leave. Would I do that? Asked Kurenai as innocently as she possibly could. When all she received were looks that clearly said that they thought she would, she continued. Okay, so I would. Just remember what I said yesterday and you should be fine. I just thought of the perfect test. Anko shouted suddenly, scaring the other two. And it would be? Naruto asked calmly while expecting the worst. Anko turned towards Kurenai and said, You should make Naru-chan steal a pair of Tenten's panties, take them to Kenshin, and have him say that she forgot them in his room last night. Kurenai laughed happily at this while Naruto blushed heavily before turning a chalk white. The thing that scared him most is that Kurenai would do it to him too. After spending so much time around Anko and Naruto, she had long since developed a sadistic side of her own, and while it didn't come out as much, it was still there. Not wanting to let Kurenai even think about it for much longer, Naruto quickly countered. Or I could, accidentally, Take a few pictures of the two of you and sell them to that pervert who writes those books you both seem to love so much. You wouldn't dare. They shouted as they forgot their laughter and paled. Try me, Naruto said calmly, and with that another glaring competition began. Don't the two of you have somewhere to be? Anko asked suddenly, snapping them all out of their game. Turning to the clock, both Kurenai and Naruto both shouted, "Shit," before disappearing in two swirls of leaves. I win, Anko said with a very satisfied smirk before she too disappeared. Kurenai and Naruto both appeared in the clearing of Training Ground 8 to find Shino and Hinata waiting quietly for them. Neither of them were exactly late, but neither were they as early as they would have liked, and by the way Hinata and Shino were resting, they had been there for quite a while longer than them. Good morning, you two. I'm sorry I'm not early, but I had these two harpies screeching at me all morning, said Naruto while Kurenai suddenly appeared behind him and smashed her fist into his head. Don't mind him. He's blonde. Kurenai teased as Hinata snickered and Naruto rubbed his head and muttered about revenge. I am pleased that you are all here so early. I was too nervous to get back to sleep once I woke up. Hinata admitted with a slight blush, and by the way Shino shifted slightly, it must have been the same for him. Then again, one can never really tell when it came to a member of the Aburame clan. As long as you remember what I said yesterday and do your best, I'm sure you'll be fine, she assured them with a warm smile. It would be even better if you would just pass us, offered Naruto hopefully. When he saw that Kurenai was smiling but shaking her head, he added, Come on, I'm letting you date me, Nei-chan. Letting me? She asked dangerously. Okay, so I don't really have a say in it, but I could easily put snakes in your bed. He threatened weakly. He and Kurenai both knew that he was very happy for them and would never try anything to break them up. They also knew that he would never try and harm her, because not only would she hurt him but Anko would train him for a few days. Just give it up, Naruto-kun. She is one of the few people you can't threaten or intimidate, advised Hinata with a smile while Naruto pouted a little and went to stand by Shino. It was worth a try, he muttered. It is better to try and fail than to give up before you start, stated Shino calmly. See, Shino agrees with me, Naruto shouted happily. But is it foolish as well as brave to fight a losing and hopeless battle? The bug user added, causing Naruto to sulk again and the two females to laugh happily. I liked you better when you were quiet. Once Kurenai and Hinata had finally stopped laughing, the older woman turned serious and said, Okay, seeing as we are a scouting team, that will be your test. What are we tracking? Asked Naruto, who was starting to get excited, and by the look in Hinata's eyes she was as well. Shino? Well, Naruto assumed that he was excited too because his insects were buzzing a little louder. Kurenai smiled evilly and pulled out a scroll and a round ball. After she tossed them both at his feet, the ball exploded into a giant cloud of smoke. Once it cleared, they saw that their would-be sensei was gone and that the scroll was still on the ground in front of them. Why do I get the feeling that this is going to be hard? Asked Naruto as he picked up the scroll and opened it. Team 8, your test is to find me. Simple, right? Well, there is a catch or two. First, you cannot be seen by anyone, shinobi or villager, once you leave the clearing. Second, the only boundaries are the village walls. Third and foremost, you only have 1 hour. Oh, and if I see a snake or insect, I will kill it. Kurenai, that crazy bit, started Naruto before Hinata slapped him in the back of the head and glared at him. What? How are we supposed to find a Genin that specializes in stealth? Are you not even going to try? Asked Shino calmly while they could hear a very slight edge to his tone. Like hell, I'm giving up. I'm just going to have to think up a way to get her back for this, he stated firmly while Hinata smiled brightly at him. Shino, how easily can to talk to your insects, and what range do you have with them? Very easily. If I stand here, I could send them to the village's walls and they would be back in 2 minutes, he answered as the other two heard slightly louder buzzing coming from his coat. Can you speak to them over distances? Hinata asked once she saw where Naruto was heading with his questions. In a limited range. I can speak with them so long as they are 100 meters from me. Any further and we risk being recognized by others. Only there is a problem, he stated in his usual monotone voice. What is it? Asked Naruto as he was trying to come up with a plan. To speak, my insects make their noise. If Kurenai-sensei hears it, she will kill them. We can't risk them just to find out where she is. Hinata said softly while Shino nodded his head very slightly to her. Luckily for her, he looked away just in time so that he wouldn't see the faint blush spread across her cheeks. Hey guys! Naruto suddenly shouted. Naruto-kun, we are supposed to be tracking, hissed Hinata while Naruto only smiled back at her. That's just the thing. If you were trying to hide from someone and you want to make it as hard as possible for them, how would you do it? He asked. It took them a few minutes, but soon Shino answered. I would track them. Knowing where they are would give you a very large advantage. Especially when the ones that are tracking you are Genin and you are a Junin. Also, Kurenai-sensei put in the stipulation that if we are seen we fail, meaning as soon as we take on step outside of this clearing we would fail. So she is watching us right now? Hinata asked calmly. More than likely. Naruto answered. I have a plan, but I need to know if you're okay with listening to me. I trust you, Hinata said right away. You have proven your skill by finding her true motives, Shino stated with a nod. Naruto smiled evilly before he leaned and started whispering his plan. Once he was done, Hinata and Shino weren't sure if he was a genius or crazy, but nonetheless they were going to go along with it. Kurenai watched from her hiding place and couldn't be happier with her team so far. Instead of running off in a panic to find her, they had chosen to stay together and form a plan before going out. They were already doing far better than her own team had done during their Genin exam. As soon as he was done speaking, Naruto filled the clearing with clones only to have most of them disappear again. Meanwhile, after using the smoke as a cover, Hinata and Shino took off into the woods to search out their sensei after they made sure that Naruto had transformed 2 of his clones to look like them. They only hoped that he had enough common sense to not make them act like him. Even the thought of a clone of him shouting made Shino cringe slightly. Kurenai knew something was up once the smoke cleared and there were only 9 extra Narutos standing with the group. She then watched as the real Naruto bit his thumb and summoned a group of 10 bright yellow snakes. What is he thinking? Those will stand out more than Guy in a room full of daimyos, she thought before the Narutos formed a circle around Hinata and Shino and sat down. Naruto and his clones sat with their eyes closed and their legs crossed as they began to devote every ounce of concentration they possessed to the task at hand. Each clone then formed the hubby seal and whispered, Hubby Matushi. Snake perspective. From her post, Kurenai watched their eyes snap open to reveal pure red eyes. Eyes that matched those of his summon perfectly. She might have been well accustomed to red eyes since she herself had them, but there was something very different in his blood-red eyes. This must be a new jutsu, she thought excitedly. Her excitement quickly became confusion when she watched the snakes spread out and place themselves in front of each of the 10 Narutos before turning towards the forest and simply stopping. I know Naruto and this can't be it, she thought quickly as she continued to watch. Any Junin will tell you that when they find a group of Genin that they like, that they will never try as hard as they possibly could. All the time a Junin will block their own skills so that the team has an easier chance of passing. Kurenai was no different. She wanted this team to pass so badly that her thoughts clouded her mind and hindered her skills in observation. Because of this handicap, Kurenai soon found herself unable to look away from the red eyes of Naruto. Shit, she thought as she cursed herself for falling into a trap. Well, I guess this explains it. When she heard a sudden buzzing coming from Naruto, she knew that it was only a matter of time before she was found. This led her to feel torn. In one hand she was proud of her team for doing so well, while in the other her pride was taking a beating. Yes, she wasn't trying her best, but no Junin expects to get caught or beaten as soon as she had. She tried everything she could think of to look away from his eyes, and as the rest of the snakes turned towards her direction she knew it was over. This was confirmed when a swarm of insects covered her body and Hinata and Shino carried her back into the clearing. As soon as they set her down, the extra Narutos and snakes disappeared along with the Hinata and Shino that were standing inside their circle. We did it. Naruto shouted happily before he pulled them each into a tight hug. Hinata giggled happily at his behavior while Shino was slightly worried that this hugging thing might be a regular occurrence. You pass. Although you did it a lot sooner than I had thought you would. Kurenai said proudly and yet a little bitterly. Kurenai-sensei, we know you were not trying your hardest. If you were, there would have been no chance of us finding you. Shino said quietly, although the insects around him buzzed happily. Yeah, Kurenai-sensei. We all know that if you didn't want us to find you, then we wouldn't have. If we could find you at your best, then we wouldn't still be Genin. Let alone new Genin. Naruto continued for the quiet boy while Hinata nodded her head in agreement. I'm glad you understand, but still, never mind. You guys did wonderfully. Now, where should we go to eat? She asked, and when Naruto's eyes lit up, they all suppressed a groan. There was only one place in the village that Naruto ate at. Yay. Ramen, again, muttered Hinata, earning her a light laugh from Hinu-sensei as the four set off from their training ground. Naruto, just what the hell was that jutsu? Kurenai shouted at the blonde boy as they all sat down at their favorite ramen bar. Favorite meaning the only one Naruto would let them eat at. Any time they tried somewhere else, he would shout blasphemy and guilt them into going to Ichiraku's with some tale about how the old man and his Masumi might starve if they didn't eat there. It didn't help matters when Tyuki backed up his claim.